Hi guys, I just wanted to shoot out a quick disclaimer. This is my first time ever making a Minecraft video on YouTube, and I'm really new to the entire process. If you have any suggestions, small or large, I would absolutely love to hear them, and I would greatly appreciate any advice possible. Thank you, and I really hope you guys enjoy the content. Alright, so to start, I am going to just showcase my base. This is on my own private SMP server, named after none other than myself, Timcraft. I started it a couple years ago, or I should say a year and a half ago, with some friends. Originally it was just two of us, and we decided to take it up after messing around during band, or after band with the whole band camp situation. And it was just us three, but after word got out that we had a server and like we had actually managed to keep it somewhat stable over time, people within our friend group and slightly outside of it that we were still acquaintances with started to accumulate, and we've got a small little community of some friends that I didn't think I would make normally, and I'm actually really happy with the way that it's turned out. The name, we originally didn't have a name for the server, and Timcraft just kind of came to be because we were sitting in band one day and someone said, "Can I join your server?" Sure. What's it called? My serve Timcraft? And the name just stuck. One thing to note about my base, I don't like planning things, if that makes sense. I don't mean planning in the sense of like individual ideas and sitting down and I hate Enderman, and sketching stuff out. In the sense of drafting up what I want to do, in the same way that I'm going to use a really bad analogy, but ultimately what it comes down to is the Minecraft world is kind of a canvas, and you ultimately want to play into your canvas's strength. So it wouldn't be a good idea to use a stretched canvas with watercolors, for example. And in that same way, I kind of agree with that mentality, in particular with Minecraft worlds, in that your base almost should act as an extension. But this is just me preferring smaller bases, or smaller structures within bases, and preferring the whole conglomerate to tell the story of your Minecraft base. And you can tell that my base has a very like seafaring theme almost to it. I originally built the base because we're on our third season now, and so season 1 I went for the sprucey theme, and we were originally on an island archipelago in a warm ocean, and I really liked this because this was my second technically true survival world, in the sense of long term on PC. And so I wanted to experiment with something that I hadn't done before, because my first world was predominantly acacia. It was set within a savanna, and I used the walls of the savanna to make myself a little kingdom. It was pretty cool. I'll throw up some builds from it, and you can see the basic outline of the build that I'm getting. Oh hey, there's a dolphin. But Season 1 was where a lot of my ideas about how I wanted to build my base in this style started to take shape. I'll throw up a picture or two here. Originally the first picture and then some later photos of the season. We ended Season 1 because I made a mistake as a young server operator and didn't have a consistent backup schedule and didn't have a proper backup. And the earliest backup I could find was 4 months old that actually still worked. And we just decided to reset the server and call it quits. And started Season 2. Season 2 was a hoot. Nobody really liked it. We called it Season 1.5 for a reason. Nobody wanted it. I really wanted to experiment, so I built a giant pyramid. I had somebody mention it on Reddit to me, and it was similar to Cubfan's pyramid. But mine, whereas his is a 1-to-1 scale, mine's a 1-to-2 scale, so it was only 16 chunks instead of Cubfan's, which I think was 32 chunks. But no, I built a giant pyramid, and I'll throw a picture up here. But Season 3 was really where I wanted to take the ideas that I had done in Season 1 and adapt them to work more within the context of I don't want to say storytelling, but in the sense that it could exist on its own. That the world isn't contained within the block that I prescribed to it, it easily could have an idea or an identity that it has. And one way that I do that is by having a lot of media influence me, and so you get this shift of dynamics throughout the base from time to time. You might notice the giant Colosseum structure in the back. You might notice these Shintoist kind of things, as well as you might notice the Viking style longships. And throughout time, the media that I've watched and read and participated in has really influenced the way that my base works. And I think that this breaks up the homogeny a little bit, and it also introduces elements that I think are good for the base, in the same way that real cities and civilizations change and adapt for different things over time. I got the idea for the Viking style. Oh, that needs to be fixed. Because I was reading The Longships by Franz G. Bensington right when the series started. I didn't actually know how I was going to build my base. I always wing everything. Let me correct myself. I wing almost everything. This large structure here was winged. I'll throw up some screenshots now showcasing that, about how I really just didn't know what I was going to do. And you can see this with this bridge here coming out, where I wanted to originally have a tower on top of it, but I didn't like that idea, and so I decided to remove it and just continue with this expanded form of this little tiny Shinto thing. And you can actually see it coming here. This is from Age of Empires 2, if you're able to identify that. But keeping up with that style of being dynamic and building with the land is something that I like doing. And obviously you can tell I've done a little bit of not doing that, but it keeps it almost real, in a sense. It helps to prescribe a sense of, like I said earlier when I was talking about the not being isolated, it gives it a sense of existence on its own, that something like this could exist. And I think that that's what really separates a lot of Minecraft builds. Not that I'm claiming mine's any higher, but just that it's a distinction between some and others, where I try to go for that almost realism aspect. I'm not a super huge fan of just the large random mega builds. I'm not saying I'm not a fan in the sense of I don't like them, but it's just not a build style that particularly like speaks to me. It's not something that I am super fond of. I tend to find myself preferring these natural things, and I liking the way that the land shapes. And you can see this in my first solo survival world, where I use that savanna. Obviously the farms in it were a little bit different, but I used the savanna landscape in order to construct it. The place that the main building you see here was originally like a little kind of a hill with a kind of a divot around it, and I flooded it with water to create this illusion of, oh look, it's in the center there and it's got a moat around it. This was 1.12 a little bit ago. And Season 1, I really didn't do that, and I think that was one of the biggest things that prevented me from properly like taking off with it. And although I definitely liked Season 1, and arguably everyone thinks it's the Golden series, it was their first introduction into what Timcraft could be, and how a true survival SMP server could be, because this was all learning for all of us. I taught myself how to do server Minecraft stuff and how to properly interact myself within a server context with other people, as well as for other people to begin with. I'm running low on food here, so I'm just going to steal some carrots. Other people, how to conduct themselves within it. And one thing that I've definitely learned is the different styles of Minecraft that there are. And one thing we actually held today was a spleefing competition, because one of our players built an automatic rebuilding spleefing setup, rebuilding spleef arena. And it's interesting to note that there's an entire group of players that's technical based, and there's another group that prefers mini games, and there's another group, me and a couple other players, that prefers this slow blow, just kind of build and expand out deal. And it's just really interesting to me, and I think that that's what really helps servers get this almost multicolored appearances as to what it can be. And players come and go, and activity wanes and waxes, but ultimately it's this different identity that that makes the server unique, and it's what I really appreciate. You can see another one of those slow-bow players really likes Age of Empires as well as I do, and he built a little outpost over here in comparison to me building my town center there, and he's done the same thing. And it's just, but playing back into that, it's just interesting to note the different ideas of what build styles people take into account, and it's something that I really, really enjoy seeing. And you can see here also this continuation of going with the land. I like this natural pathway kind of dealio, and in particular, this is honestly one of my favorite builds I think I've ever done. It's not very complex, it's not the biggest, but just this like tower, this little farmhouse sitting atop this hill. I just love it for some reason. I don't know why. I'm really, really proud of it. I just really like it. And you can see the different build styles coming into place here. I get a lot of influence from social media sites also, like Reddit. This wall design was originally co-opted from Reddit. It's not the same. It definitely has its differences, but it's something that is of note. And you're going to see here, this is something I'm actually going to touch on in a little bit. This is my Colosseum, and this is playing back into the thing being influenced by media. I originally got it after, I built it up after I saw Gladiator, because I bought Gladiator from a thrift store, and I'm like, oh, a movie about gladiators, how good can it be? I genuinely enjoyed it, and it kind of sparked a fire of interest in Rome, and I've still continued with it to this day. I just recently bought a book, SPQR by Mary Beard, that talks about the real growing of Rome and understanding how Rome was different, and ultimately how it ended up. It doesn't really talk about the decline or really the super late periods of it, but it lets your mind really extrapolate that for yourself, and understanding about how Rome was an amazing political unit for the time period, about how it lasted almost 2 millennia. It only fell when the Ottomans truly came through and knocked down Constantinople, which caused all the people to flee, further bolstering the Renaissance in Europe. But it's just really interesting to see. And this is a build that, well, I definitely winged. Like, with the exception of the first circle. Okay, there's a zombie. I designed it to be 81 across, so that way each of the 4 triangles within the circle would form perfect 45, 45, 90 triangles. So that way I could try to keep consistency within the archways on the outside. That didn't end up working, and you can see it right here, and it's something that really frustrates me with about how that's not as thick as that, but this is how every other one around is done. So I need to tear this wall down and rebuild it, and it's something that really frustrates me, particularly since this is, I think, the largest single build I've ever done. I think as a whole I've had bases that are bigger, quite bigger, as well as concepts, such as the minecart track system I built for Season 1. I'll throw up a couple pictures here, as well as like the hubs I built. I built an entire like metro map, and we conducted entire server operations through this. And it was a lot of fun, but the Colosseum definitely is like the largest individual build I think I've ever done. In terms of, I want to say most complex, is this build right here. So earlier I mentioned about how I was using the Shintoist ideas for some of this original designing I did, as well as kind of meshing it with the Vikings. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I got the Viking idea from a book, The Longships by Franz G. Bensington. Highly recommend. You should really read it if you're into classics, particularly if you enjoy historical fictions. It talks about the accounts of Red Orm, and at least it's just a really good book, and I highly recommend anyone who enjoys historical fiction to check it out, particularly since it's, I don't want to say it's entirely historically accurate, but it's really accurate in the sense that it properly portrays what it would be like for Vikings at the time period. One thing that was almost eye-opening to me was understanding how closely entwined most of the medieval world actually was, right around the rise of the Vikings, late 8th century, early 9th century. And it's just interesting to note how, again, just intertwined everything is, because it's not that, like, it's bad, but you just learn as everything is kind of separate, and as a, like, almost a thing of human nature, you tend to put these things within their own isolated boxes. And it's not until someone, walks up to you and shakes you and says, no, this really wasn't how it was, that the world was actually really, really open and dynamic. I say open, obviously, they're still murdering each other for the stupidest stuff, but open in the sense of just raw connectivity. And the last story, or the last chapter, I don't want to say chapter, but the last section of the book really highlights this. I won't spoil it, but you'll know what it is if you get to it, about how just connected everything was. In particular, understanding the Vikings' view on Constantinople or Miklagard, seeing about how Vikings were oftentimes the personal bodyguard of the sultans and of the caliphs, of the caliphates, right at the time that the Islamic empires were really starting to get going. And it's just super, super interesting to understand this dynamic, particularly, again, with early Christianity trying to take roots within Scandinavia and stuff like that. But yeah, I think for the most part, that's just what I wanted to get across with this. Showcasing my builds. Playing back into the media thing, this is a ship taken from Reddit, that's a ship taken from Reddit too, because I'm not very good at organic shapes, for like builds like curves and stuff like that. I'm trash at them. You saw that with the Colosseum, but co-opting the designs and using them within my builds, at least, by not having me design them, gives it that sense of foreignness, that almost alienation, right? Because it's definitely not the same, right? That's dark oak wood, and it's got this deep, long sail, and it gives the sense of foreign, and it's really, really cool, I feel, in increasing the depth of the story. And there are other little things that I like to do to increase this story, such as being able to tell that, oh, hey, there's a lot of wood being stored here. Maybe wood is their major output. And it's just little things that I like to leave around. This area is still being decorated, but for the most part, the large structures are done. This is my attempt to get into redstone. I'm not very good at redstone. Like, I have a little bit of experience with stuff in that regard, like when it comes to like Factorio. I really, really enjoy Factorio, but I just can't seem to get into redstone. And it's not that I can't understand it, I'm perfectly capable of it, but it's just, for some reason, every time I like turn on a mumbo jumbo video, I end up tuning myself out, just because it's not what speaks to me. And that's another thing that I really like about servers like this and playing with other people, is you get exposed to all these different build styles. The technical players don't really tend to do these long blown out builds, and you can see that because they do all these massive, awesome technical things, and they struggle in other ways, and so it kind of creates a relationship of symbiosis, where they'll come to me and they'll offer me a deal and says, hey, I need to make the trading hall for my villagers pretty, can you do this for me? And in return, I'll do this for you, and it's just something that I really, really enjoy. But I think for the most part, this is the end of what I want to say that the first video is. I really just want to thank whoever's watching this for clicking on my channel and taking the time to video. And if you have any comments or suggestions for the channel, I would really, really appreciate hearing about them, especially since I'm so new. But as the sun sets, our story ends. Have a good night.